This is The Changed Physician, episode 141. Welcome back to The Changed Physician. I am Melissa Cady, the challenge doctor, with my awesome, I was about to say amazeballs, co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And we're here today to discuss a topic that is not too unrelated from our most recent episode, but there's a skill that we feel is extraordinarily important that all physicians practice that's not necessarily considered it's not medical. So do you want to enlighten the audience as to what that might be?
Sure. So we're talking about like what's the top non-medical skill and or something that all physicians at least have more than awareness of, but a kind of at least superficial knowledge of the importance of this. And we have touched on this in many episodes of the Changed Physician podcast. I can't remember, since we're at where are we 140 now, whether we've done an episode on this, but I don't think so. But that skill is, and it should be maybe skills, is understanding sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it difficult sometimes with the skills versus the skill, the plural versus the singular. Because to me, when you're looking at sales and marketing, it's not either or. Mm-hmm. But it's the process itself. And so what we call marketing may be one end of that process and sales may be the other, but you can't ignore them combined. Like it's really something in my opinion that you can't separate the two. But without a doubt, like if you are a physician, if you're a human, I cannot see anything that is, well, you have to know how to live and take care of yourself and some of the basics there stuff, but understanding sales and marketing is absolutely crucial. And if you're a physician, because you're dealing with other people now, I can't think of anything that's more important in your practice other than your clinical knowledge is understanding the principles of sales and marketing.
Right. Well, I think there's the premise is that you're trying to influence, in some capacity. So they do go hand in hand, because if you're marketing, there's an intention there to sell. And that's how I see it. And if you see it differently, let me know, and let the audience know. But that, I don't think, unless you just want to be unsuccessful at your marketing and not sell anything, I don't see how you can separate it. So yeah, I agree. I think those both kind of go hand in hand.
Well, I like sort of the definitions of this stuff. And if you kind of, because then people, and actually I've looked at a lot of definitions on this, and even like the fancy business sites or whatever, it's really kind of curious is that there never seems to be a really consensus on it. I follow a lot of direct response marketers, and you know that. And so I kind of go the direct response mark, because I think direct response meaning you are marketing and then selling in such a way that you can measure outcome. You're measuring the click, you're measuring the purchase, right? So we know that there is an actual return upon the marketing and sales process that we've initiated, versus people throwing up a sign and saying, oh, that's our marketing. That could be marketing, but you don't have any idea whether it's working or not.
Right.
So from this direct response approach, what I love this quote, and I can't remember which marketer, I think it might've been Rich Sheffrin, but it's a quote from Peter Drucker, who's like this big business maven. Like everybody who's even in traditional business as direct response kind of knows Peter Drucker. Mm-hmm. And Drucker's definition of the purpose of marketing. So not the definition, but the purpose. The purpose of marketing is to make sales superfluous. And what that basically sort of tells you then, if we're looking at sales and marketing as a process, what marketing does is a way to channel desire in such a way that when sales, which is that conversion, when that choice, when that behavior change has been initiated, that becomes easy to do, right? So marketing is the journey. It's like is sort of the narrative that leads up to that final minute, and then what is going to happen next, right? And so I guess that's a long way to sales. I still didn't define sales and marketing, but I basically said the purpose of marketing is to make sales superfluous, but really the purpose then of marketing is to then channel this desire towards a action that will then create a behavior or initiate a behavior that goes to fulfilling that desire. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, this is so interesting the way you had said it, and the way that I'm processing it is that marketing is this, essentially, we're called the change physician, is that process of change, the psychological changes in order to actually manifest into something else. So to me, it feels like it correlates well with just this idea of change being a process, and that sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time because psychologically, we're quite complex.
No, I agree, because change is basically a sales and marketing process, right? And so when we had Tim Creasy on, and they're talking about AdCar, that's a sales and marketing process. Change strategies are sales and marketing processes. And it's a change strategy is what you are then marketing and selling is a new belief or behavior that you are wanting to undergo. And that's the part I find absolutely fascinating about all of this. This is the fact that it's essentially universal. So if you externalize it, and now you're in a practice, if you say you're a primary care doc and you went into medicine because you want to help people get better, and then you start at that realization, and particularly what you're seeing in primary care, well, I shouldn't say that, in virtually every specialties, is that the things that people are coming in with, almost all of them generally have something to do with behavior and lifestyle change. These chronic diseases that we're wasting all this money on with direct interventions and things are diseases of lifestyle intervention. So if you're a primary care doc, then the question would be, well, how then can I build my practice around creating a narrative, a story, the marketing component that builds up this awareness and desire of my patients so that they will take the step that I can help them to get better? Not necessarily a prescription, because I know a lot of people get frustrated with that, but if you have people where obesity is a problem, well, you want people to start doing healthy lifestyle interventions. How then can you set up your practice in such a way to plant these little seeds that supports this common narrative that then gets your patient to take the step of, I'm changing my diet, I'm increasing activity into my life, I am going to be getting adequate sleep because I'm taking these strategies. So if you're not thinking that way, and then you're seeing this stuff over and over, and we're seeing sicker and sicker and sicker people in medicine because we've sort of wasted or not learned about change strategies. Then we think, well, they just didn't want to do anything. Oh, they're not taking my recommendations, they're non-compliant. Well, no, you didn't sell well.
Yeah.
Your sales funnel on how to initiate and create and to encourage behavior change in your patients so that they can get healthy, which is what they want, is flawed.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so we can pull any sort of specialty and we can do this and sort of dissect it in the same way.
Right. Well, there's so much psychology that people are ignoring, which is, first of all, feeling heard, first of all, and creating an environment with a community that maybe you create opportunities that people can gather, or people can have the ideal support for them to make better choices. But there's a lot of things to do with the environment. So a practice is a perfect place to start to influence the human psychology in a positive way that can basically support change. And unfortunately, a 5-minute visit with you and just writing a script for something is not going to facilitate the healthy process of healthy change. But
yeah, and it also, I think the more you learn, the more then you can incorporate this into your practice. Now, obviously, this is difficult if you're an employed physician in an environment that's not interested in actually doing things in new and interesting ways. So yes, I understand that, folks. But if you're thinking this way, and then perhaps that you wanted to step into a direct care model, like, you do pretty much direct care anesthesia, although that's really, you're sort of providing a specific service to the physicians and their patients. But if you find yourself saying the same thing over and over and over again in your day to your patients, well, think about a way, well, okay, that's the marketing.
Right.
Okay, if in order to get people to start moving more or to eat better or changing their diet or perhaps learning about stress reduction in such a way so we start decreasing those stress diseases, of which there are many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can say, well, how then do I, purpose of marketing, Peter Drucker, to make sales superfluous, how can I build an infrastructure or the resources in order to do all that learning and education so that by the time they see me in my office, they're ready to take that next step?
Mm-hmm.
That comes down into this marketing aspect. And what's super cool about in this day and age is we have all this stuff. We have YouTube, you have blogs. So as a physician, now you can start creating content. The content is easy because it's the same questions that the people asking you every day. Instead of answering it every day, you say, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to record a video answering this specific question. And maybe I need to break it down into 3 different steps because maybe the answer is too long. Then I'm going to make a video about that. I'm going to write a blog post on it. I'm going to create a little pamphlet or booklet that I can hand out to my patients. And then when they come in with this question and I'm already strapped for time, I'm going to say, you know what, this is really important. Here's this information. Here's my website. Here's et cetera, I would like you to review that. And then on your next visit, we can answer questions, go next steps. But now you're thinking like a marketer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to be perfect either. If it's not the perfect camera, I mean, iPhones are just the current phones now. You can create that. You can always, when you start reflecting or asking your patients how, what they learned from it, if it was helpful, they'll let you know. And it'll spur additional conversation and more effective, probably, conversation. And then you can change it, edit it, and do better ones later as time goes on. So yeah, there's no perfection in this. This is always going to evolve as a process, and we all can get better at sales and marketing.
And it's an easier way because if you don't really view it, because sales has this kind of stigma attached with it. If you instead of think about I'm selling, just think, well, what is it that you as a physician know is valuable for your patients?
Mm-hmm.
What actions do they need to take that they're not doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then how then do you to create this infrastructure, taking things that you directly control, which we all can do this stuff on the internet now, and do it in such a way that you are supporting the behavior that you want to see,
Right.
It's,
and not always trading your time and duplicating the same efforts. So it gives you more sanity and more freedom.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And giving more value to your patients.
Much more value. And then that, I guess, if there's a critic out there, I can always, I'm kind of thinking about, well, what would someone say? Oh, that's great, Dr. Cuccaro, but then you can't do that because of the legal consequences. Well, A, you put a little disclaimer in the front, and B, are you saying this anyway in your visits? Is it good information? Is it factually true? Is it in line with evidence? Well, the actual risk of you having something bad happen because of that is low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of remember when I was first stepping out into that internet model, we were so scared that we're going to get sued.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that is an absolute risk, but it's a big risk if you're saying crap.
Yep.
If you are a physician, you should not, first of all, you shouldn't be saying crap because you should have a physician's mind and you should have actually done some research and you should kind of know where this stuff is coming from and you should feel confident in your clinical skills.
Mm-hmm.
But that the risk, I would love to, that's another guess we need to get, because I would like to see the risk. The risk, I think, again, you're probably significantly lower risk of any sort of lawsuit associated with that as compared to typical behavior. I'll never forget when I was in residency, we had to do a grand rounds presentation in our CA2 year. And one of them was really, really good. I wish I could remember her name. Chadia, I think it was Amy Chadia. And she decided to talk about malpractice. And one of them, she had this absolute amazing presentation on what our fears were about getting sued and what the actual reality was. Do you know what the number one risk factor was for getting a lawsuit?
Not communicating. Well, I know there's something I cannot think of right now.
It is around that line of not communicating. It was basically if they didn't like you.
Yeah.
Right? So it wasn't, your clinical acumen or whatever. And so this whole thing is if you are working and providing these things and you are kind of looking at this as a marketing funnel, again, like how to educate, and you make it so that they resonate with you as the physician, because now you're the voice, you're on the YouTube station like we are or whatever, but you're providing this useful stuff, they're more likely to like you, in which case you're probably less likely to sue you. Right. And the people who don't like you and that message doesn't resonate with are going to be less likely to engage in your services, where there should be something bad happen, which in then situation, bad happen with something bad happens with a doctor that you don't like, greater risk of lawsuit, versus something bad happens with a doctor that you like. A lot of times they don't want to sue. I mean, and sometimes they should sue. I mean, that's a whole different point. There's doctors out there that are very well liked and their patients love them, then they shouldn't be practicing.
Right. Ooh, I know some.
Anyway, so we'll stay away from that because that's not the point here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if you have value to give your patients out of benevolence and out of a genuine desire to offer them something that they might need, versus instilling fear and doing sales and marketing in a sense where you make them think they have to get something they don't need, there's a discrepancy there. It can be subtle for some situations, but I say most physicians are doing the benevolent thing, and but there is a business side of medicine that you just always have to be kind of aware of, and that's why a few opinions or doing your due diligence can be helpful. But the sales and marketing, I don't know how you can. Let me just say, I have always been a big proponent of communicating, transparency, honesty, and trying to explain things well, asking them if they understood, or having them repeat back their understanding, and just make sure that there's no I basically want to give every opportunity for the patient to feel like they've not only been heard, but asked all their questions, and they have a clear picture of what their options are, instead of funneling them just to one thing. So yes, there's sales and marketing towards something possibly, but if there are multiple options, I also think it's imperative for physicians to give informed consent, and understanding of that these are your options, and you have a choice to make for yourself, but I'm here for you if you need something. Am I going off on tangents? Well, sales and marketing, Anyway, so what do you feel like is the biggest takeaway that people should consider in their practice when it comes to sales and marketing? Like, what's your ultimate wish or hope that people get out of this episode?
Yeah, I think is to take a step back, and first is to look at what your opinions are. Like when you hear the word sales, what's your first gut reaction? Right? Are you excited, or are you more like most of us going, right? And then probe the reasons why. Why is it that you get that gut reaction? And then take a moment to actually do the research, or at least to kind of look into, explore about it, right? Because sales in and of itself shouldn't be icky. It shouldn't be this evil thing. You shouldn't, when you hear the word sales, you shouldn't be thinking of used car salesmen right off the top of your head. Those are the bad examples of it. But take a moment in time to start kind of to think about good experiences. When you're in a restaurant and your waiter recommended something to you, and you were so grateful that they said, you need to get the baked Alaska or whatever, the shrimp scampi or something. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you were discussing with a friend and they wanted you to go to the new dance club, or maybe see a movie, and you're kind of resistant, but then you listened to their persuasive story and you did it. Mm-hmm. And you loved it. Mm-hmm. Those are the examples of sales that you should be kind of paying attention to. Or maybe you were in clinical care and maybe you were in that patient role and someone said, hey, I know you feel unsafe you're going to be okay. Here's what I would recommend. Here's why, and here's how to do it. So I guess the ultimate, and that's a lot of, instead of just a single bullet point that we can take from this, was just, again, increasing an awareness of the importance of sales and marketing, just having appreciation for it. And if it doesn't lead you into sort of the rabbit hole of how all this stuff fits together, then email me and we'll have a direct discussion. I'll point you in direction of some of the super cool books when you're like, oh my God, this is like the nature of being a human.
Yeah. Well, I think most of us don't want to think we're sold too, that, that we made our decision on our own. But one last thought I was going to say is it's about persuading. I think it's a good word, persuading others. And there is that book, Persuasion, out there that, if you're mindful and aware, you have a way to guide people in a certain direction.
Yes. And we all do it. And if you say you don't do it, you're a liar. Seriously, you are.
You're not aware.
You're not aware of it. And everybody who says that you hate sales is actually not true, because you can always think of somebody that you walked into a bookstore, gave you a great recommendation. You're in the restaurant, they gave you a great recommendation. All of that is sales. Well, I should say that all is sales and marketing, since we're kind of pulling that whole thing together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely am more appreciative of it. And I hope people will come out of this episode, in particularly physicians, if there's anything that you can learn, no matter what your clinical background, that will help you in your practice as well as in your life, it is really understanding at least the fundamentals when it comes to sales and marketing.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a good way to end it.
I guess so. Am I supposed to take it out?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us to The Changed Physician. We enjoyed having you today. And if you are so inclined, you can join that community sale action by going to thechangedphysician.com and signing up for the email list there. Right now, we're not doing anything other than recording episodes, but maybe we'll have something that will benefit you in the future. But until next time, stay well.
Take care.